I'm getting introduced. I think that model interest rates will have and just that model of giant growth of the house without no, there's six. Yeah.
You want people to hear the reason? But we only live on the ground floor.
I'll introduce the mayor.
Ready?
So, we've got a bunch of people in the waiting room. Ready? Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. This is our inaugural CityLearn, and I'm excited to say we have more than a dozen people joining us virtually tonight. So this will be great. We'll have all kinds of interaction. I am really pleased. Our inaugural speaker tonight is Mayor Keith Scully, and I will turn this over to him. So are you
ready?
Thank you.
I think that's the first time I've ever had applause in this room. So people say other things, but clapping, not really. Yeah. Delighted to see all of you. And at the turnout, we've got lots of people online. Just a personal note, today is my 51st birthday. And I thought, yeah, I made it. And I thought, what better way to spend it than here with you folks talking about the city? So yeah, I want to touch on just a couple of things. Well, I've got about 20 minutes total, and I want to save, 12, 15 minutes of that for questions. So we make sure to get that. The point of this is to give everybody an opportunity to interact directly with city staff and elected officials, have us talk at you a little bit, but mostly have us listen and actually be able to respond. We have public comment every city council meeting, but the way that's structured, we listen and we don't answer. So this is a chance for folks to ask questions, easy ones, hard ones, aggressive ones, whatever you want, and have whichever council members here actually give you an answer as to what they think or what they think should happen. So I am mayor, but I'm mostly a council member. We have a council manager form of government, which means there's 7 elected council members. We have an appointed city manager, and all 7 of us supervise the city manager jointly. My responsibilities as mayor are to run the agenda, sort of deal with a lot of day-to-day stuff, but I'm not an executive like Bruce Harrell of Seattle is, or like the president or the governor is. The stuff I wanted to touch base on are some things that some of you know inside and out. Others of you may have heard for the first time. One is our RACER program, which used to be called RADAR. And what that is mental health professionals who are out in the field. Historically, they've been working with police officers. So one radar responder along with one police officer in a police car. And when there's a mental health emergency, they respond. Because what we've learned is behavioral health crises don't need police. They don't need paramedics. What they need is mental health professionals. And the first ones telling us that were the police officers themselves, who said, we don't really know how to deal with this. We don't want to deal with this. This is not something we're necessarily good at. So I said radar, we've now called it RACER just to keep it confusing. And what RACER is it's 2 mental health professionals in their own vehicle who cover the entire North County and respond independently on behavioral health emergencies. What that enables them to do is stay until the problem is sorted out. It's not a police officer who is taken off of traffic patrol or responding to an armed robber or anything like that. It's someone whose job it is to sit with this person and figure out what the right solution is. When they're not responding in emergencies, they can do follow-up visits. And they respond on anything that might involve behavioral health, and then they'll check back in. How are things going? Some people tell them, go away, I don't want to talk to you, and that's fine. But other people want the interaction. Some families that have someone in their family who has challenges want the interaction. Thus far, it's been highly successful, and hopefully it will make behavioral health a behavioral health emergency, not a police emergency going forward. Excuse me. Shifting gears completely, one of the major infrastructure projects that's going in is obviously the light rail line. And the city's role in that, we work with Sound Transit, we're doing a lot of roadway improvements and so forth, but we've acquired funding through the state and federal government to put a non-motorized bridge across I-5 right at 148th, which will connect directly to the station. Non-motorized means pedestrians and bicycles. It was a giant undertaking, and hopefully it will mean that folks who live west of the freeway have a way to get to the light rail station without having to drive and park, which will be impossible after 8 in the morning because there's only so many parking spaces, or without having to try and find some way to get what's really not very far as the crow flies, but if you've got to go all the way down to 145th over and back up, is quite a hike. No freeway lid needed, exactly. The last thing I want to touch base on, those of you who were here on Monday's council meeting, you know more about it than I do. And I saw some names online who are also very active. And that's the sidewalk program, specifically as it interfaces with trees. So we've got sidewalks from throughout the decades. Some of them were poured in the 1950s, and they're about that wide. And there's a tree planted next to it, which was a sapling when it was planted, and is now a really giant London plane tree. And if you look at some of these spaces, you've got a little bit of sidewalk, a lot of tree, and the sidewalk's cracked. It's just not working for us. So the community is always concerned about trees. The council is also concerned about trees, and so is staff. And figuring out where to draw the line, how to balance tree canopy preservation, which is super important, with sidewalks, which is important for environmental reasons. It's also important for mobility reasons. Shoreline is an aging city. We are a city that has a lot of folks who get around differently. And as the years go by, we're all going to end up there. And some of these sidewalks, if you're in a wheelchair or have a walker, they're just not passable. So what we try to do, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, is figure out, can we preserve the tree first? Either by just pouring a slightly smaller sidewalk, if we can do that within Americans with Disability Act requirements, doing something creative like putting down steel pads over the roots, grinding it down, and then building the sidewalk right next to it. If that doesn't work, can we replace it? In some of the areas, the answer has been we can't. It just doesn't work out. There is always, I promise you, there is always a way to save the tree if you throw enough money at it. You can acquire easements by eminent domain, you can build cutouts, you can build bump outs. And it's the balance between, is it worth spending the money to save this particular tree, or are we going to decide this one goes? And I will tell you, it is a highly controversial topic, and I'm not sure we get it right. We're always working on it. I appreciate the folks who are very concerned with trees, and I appreciate the fact it's at the forefront of our agenda. And one of the things we've committed to is making sure there's enough advanced public comment period so folks get their opinions out there. So that's my super high gloss on the city. I could talk until I'm 52 about what's going on in Shoreline, but what I would much rather do is hear what you're concerned about, either stuff you want me to hear or questions you have that maybe I can answer. And Constance, what's the format for the questions? How do we do it?
Thank you for asking that. We don't have a huge crowd tonight, but we do have a crowd online. We just keep getting more and more, which is really exciting. If people will just keep questions to one at first for a first round, so everybody has a chance to ask or make a comment. And if we get through all of those and have time, we're really going to be very mindful of people's time tonight. Then you're welcome to ask a second one, but please do keep it to one. And folks who are joining us online, I just let you know they can ask questions through chat, and we'll direct them to you.
Okay, so the online folks are just going to be written and then you'll read them to me. Okay, yeah. So I guess we just do it Jerry Springer style. If you want to ask a question, raise your hand. I'll give you the mic. Patty, we talk every 20 minutes. I will get to you, I promise.
Hi, I'm Nataline. I live in the Echo Lake neighborhood, And there's a number of dogs there. And I know that all dogs are required to be on leash. And there's only 2, maybe 3, 4 dog parks, and there's really nothing near Echo Lake. And a lot of the residents there, dog owners, would love to have more dog parks so that we can let our dogs off leash and run around together. Are there any plans to increase funding for dog parks so that we can just walk locally instead of having to drive? Thank you.
And do you want to weigh in? There's a dog down there. So the answer is yes. So we have a dog park that is, it's on the Fircrest campus on actually state property that we lease. We have a dog park on Richmond Beach, the beach itself, in the non-summer months. We have one at Hill, what's the name of the park? Sunset View. Shoreview, thank you. Shoreview Park, and we are adding another one at James Keogh as part of our park bond projects. We're always looking for opportunities for more dog parks because I agree with you. We get a lot of complaints from dog owners saying there's not enough space for dogs. We also get a lot of complaints from park users saying you need to enforce the leash law. My kid's afraid of dogs, or if there was an off-leash hostile one or whatever. So the 2 solutions to that are making sure we have enforcement, but also making sure there's another place to go. Keogh is our big project. There's nothing else in the pipeline, but we are always, Ridgecrest, that's right. Thank you. Ridgecrest Park next to the freeway will also be getting a dog park. Patty is my former neighbor and is very involved in neighborhood council and so forth, and she always keeps me on task. Question, sir? Yeah.
So I'm Bill Bear, Briarcrest neighborhood. So one of the concerns we have is the schools are seeing decreased enrollment. And when we ask people what's going on, they say we're building a lot of apartments, but those apartments are primarily single bedroom, single individual in a unit. And families with 1 or 2 kids, 1 bedroom is not going to work. And the cost of the 2 and 3 bedroom is prohibitive for working families.
And you unfortunately have hit what I think is one of the most difficult challenges we're going to face over the next decade or so, because you're 100% right. When I was moving from my former house in Ridgecrest to Richmond Beach, we needed to rent for a month or so. And we found exactly 0 3-bedroom apartments available in Shoreline. None, not for any money, no matter what. You can rent houses, but those of course want a year lease. There was nothing on the market. And the pipeline is all studio 1 and 2 bedrooms. And that's purely economics. That's purely because if they rent a 2-bedroom and they can get 7 of them in a building, that's better than renting 5 3-bedrooms. It's just pure economics. We don't currently mandate a number of bedrooms. We require all developers within our high-rise zones, or MUR 70 zones, to make 20% of the apartments affordable to those who make less than the area median income. But we don't say anything about the number of bedrooms. I don't have a solution for that yet. I've had a ton of conversations with developers asking them, what would it take to get you to build this? And what I've consistently heard is, it doesn't pencil out for us. And you got to always take that with a grain of salt. And it may be that we have to mandate it, because that's an absolute problem. We're getting folks with families moving into the $800,000 to $1 million townhomes. We're getting folks with families in the remaining single family housing. The multifamily housing, for the most part, is young single folks and folks in retirement, which are valuable members of our community, but don't make the full spectrum mix that I'm hoping the city has. Patty, let's get you in. And sorry.
Great. Now that I have my mouth full. So Patty Hale, Ridgecrest neighborhood, former neighbor with Mayor Scully. He's the former. I'm still where I'm at in the original house. My question is with the street tree issue / debacle of sorts, does the city have plans for replacing trees in other properties as a payback, a trade-off for the trees that have to be removed, whether it's placing them in an existing park or planting additional trees to cover the canopy loss at our new park off of 185th and 10th? So what are we going to get for what we lost?
So for private developers, we have replacement requirements. And sometimes we require them to do off-site replacement, which is exactly that. We don't require ourselves to do that. So if we take out a street tree, the hope is it gets replaced on site. If it can't be replaced on site, it's just gone. There's not a guarantee that there will be others elsewhere. But we have our urban forestry plan, which is under development. Parks Board has it right now, and I met with them and I encouraged them to think big. I mean, I don't see any reason in an area that was formerly 100 or nearly 100% forest not to have trees in every possible space, right? So if we've got a park that's not a ball field, we should be planting it. If we've got a median that could support trees, we should be out there planting them. We do, I think we had 1,200 total delivered. I don't know how many made it to the ground, but we don't do it on the scale I think we need to, because as the city continues to develop, we are going to continue to lose canopy on some sites, and we need to replace it wherever possible with trees on site.
We have some online questions as well.
Do you want to take those?
Why don't you go and then I'll
So Mayor Scully, so following on the Mr. Bear's question and sort of a corollary question about how the city is supporting, encouraging developers to build so many apartments. So it's been said before that what we really end up doing is we're creating a permanent renter class because there's a paucity of condominiums and those kinds of development. So I know it's a huge economic issue to try to explain the balances all, that are involved there, but what would it take for the city to provide developers with enough incentive, and would that ever be enough, to build condominiums that could be 3-bedroom condominiums, right? Instead of the trend that we see now, these apartments.
And this is something we can talk about for hours and hours, and all I'm going to do is agree with you. It's a problem. I've been on council 8 years. I've tried to sort of pick one thing at a time to focus on. I'm up for re-election and running unopposed, so you're stuck with me for another 4 years. And that's what I want to look at, because there aren't easy answers to it. And you are 100% right. We are absolutely doing that. We're requiring affordable rental housing. We're not requiring affordable for sale housing, and it is not getting built. We hoped when we opened up a lot of land to development that the townhouses would be affordable, just supply and demand. They're 700,000, 800,000, a million. It's just not affordable housing. So we're looking at a variety of options. There are a few builders like Habitat for Humanity and others who build low-cost for sale housing. We're looking at the few parcels we have that the city owns and isn't using. Like there's that dirt lot next to Spiro's that is owned by the city. We bought it as part of the Aurora project for construction. We're not gonna make a park out of it. It's not big enough, but maybe somebody would be willing to build something there if we just give it to them. We gave land to King County Housing Authority to build permanent supportive housing, which is a different thing. We can do that. There are also things like community land trusts, where a community land trust owns the land, people own the houses on it. That makes it much more affordable because the dirt itself you don't own, you just own the house. We aren't doing much in that area, and we need to be doing more. I don't have a plan or a program to tell you, but we are looking at things, and for me, that's one of the biggest challenges. I mean, I want Shoreline to be an affordable place to live. I don't, Patty, when I moved in opposite you, my neighbors were a Boeing machinist, a Seattle police officer, there was a school teacher, and me. And that's not who's moving in, because the houses there in Ridgecrest are now retailing for, I think I paid $225 for mine 15 years ago or whatever, and they're certainly not retailing for that now. Online questions.
Okay, one, does the city have a vision or mechanism for allowing unmanaged public open space such as Southwoods and Briarcrest? So not quite sure how to answer that, or how you would answer that, but the question I think is about unmanaged public.
Yeah, so just natural areas.
Yes.
Yeah, so those all fall within the rubric of parks. I mean, we do have some properties that just aren't really used, but very few in Shoreline. Most either has stuff on it or it's a park. And our parks are used for a variety of purposes. Some of them, particularly ones purchased through the Conservation Futures tax program, which is the funding source, have to be left basically natural. So we just acquired a small parcel. It's a single family lot, but a big one, right on Echo Lake with Conservation Futures money. And that's going to get a walking trail and a bench. And otherwise the trees are going to be left alone. So that's one of the goals of the park system. It's also called passive recreation sometimes. The other thing we have is a lot of parkland that isn't developed yet. So we have the Edwin Pratt Park, which is the Edwin Pratt Memorial Blackberry Patch, because we don't have funds to do anything with it yet. That's basically being warehoused long-term. That land remains natural too, although long-term we will do something with it.
Thank you. This is a comment, but it is related to trees from a different perspective. Dana notes that I'm also concerned about trees that knock out the power. Many of us are electric only, and many times the outages are when the weather is terrible. So the city light workers are at risk, and those who are dependent on electricity for medical equipment or heat or refrigeration needs to be balanced.
Absolutely. And conveniently, we met with Seattle City Light at Monday night's meeting before our official meeting, and we talked to them about that. I haven't been hearing a ton of complaints about power outages over the last couple of years. When I first started on council, it was very frequent. City Light is responsible for maintaining the lines. It's their program. Us as a rate, not us as a city, but us as ratepayers pay them. And part of what we pay them to do is keep the lines intact. They also have to balance the need for trees with the need to preserve the lines. They generally err in favor of protecting the lines, and we've had public concerns about that as well. For the most part, they tend to be pretty aggressive. I'm in Richmond Beach, which is one of the highest outage areas. And yeah, it happens. If the wind blows, the power's going out somewhere. They track the highest, most frequent outage areas and try and prioritize tree trimming there. I encourage you, if it's affecting you more than you think it should, to let them know or let us know at the city, and we'll let them know, because it's never going to go away, right? We will never have an above ground system that's completely immune from storm damage, but it shouldn't be every winter your power goes out 6 times, right? There's got to be a balance somewhere in there. It's 7:23. Can I go till 7:30, or is that, or 7, should I end?
We've got till 7:30, and I have another question here. How is it, and I think this is probably related to Racer. How is it decided who responds to emergency calls? What happens if a police officer is dispatched for a mental health crisis? And how often does that happen? I worry that if I report what I think is a mental health crisis, I may be putting that person in danger.
You may be putting, I know you didn't ask the question, but I don't know, I was about to ask you for a clarification, but I'm assuming the person is the person who's having the mental health emergency.
Yeah.
So that is a work in progress. So our Racer professionals are on duty, I think, from, is it noon to 10? Okay. Right, but right now we've got noon to 10. They're on duty and available. So we had an incident this morning that was handled by police because it happened at 7 in the morning and Racer just wasn't there yet. We want to get them there 24 hours a day. And how it's dispatched is either through the dispatch center or individual police officers can make the decision to call them in. The police have been very receptive to this. They don't want to be in the situation where they've got a gun and there's someone who's really upset and they escalate the situation just by being there. The flip side of that is there are some situations where a mental health professional is not going to be safe without someone who has the ability to use force to protect themselves or to restrain. So dispatch is a work in progress for the most part. If it looks like there's any potential for violence, you get both. And then Racer professionals should take the lead on that, but it obviously is very situationally dependent. I personally don't hesitate to call 911 when I see something. My experience has been positive. I know not everyone's has been, but I encourage folks to use it, particularly because the current attitude is let's not respond with police with a law enforcement presence when in fact it's a mental health emergency. Let's get can we get the last? Is there one more?
No, but the person who asked the question about trees and outages reports that they've had 3 outages in the past year that lasted nearly 24 hours each.
Okay.
So they live near LFP, and when she talked to them, they said to chat with council members. So thank you for your comment.
Okay, all right. Have her email either me personally or at council and just provide the address and I'll forward it along. The City Light should not have said talk to council members because I'm short a chainsaw and there's not much I can do.
Thanks. Thomas Griggs. We're on 3rd Avenue. My question is more of a macro question about the comprehensive plan, and it's a 20-year plan?
Yes, it's updated every time.
Oh, okay.
10 now.
All right. So my question is, is there anybody in that planning process that is looking at the concept of transition towns? You know what I'm talking about with that? It's a global movement where there are some municipalities who are concerned that things are going to fall apart in a rather dramatic way. And they are making contingency plans for things getting particularly bad. Maybe that's based on climate. Maybe that's based on economics. Maybe that's based on some disintegration of democracy and respect for authority. People have their different ideas about how bad things can get or what might go wrong. But the movement in general is kind of a municipality preparedness process. Is there anybody that's looking into that and building that into the plan?
Not specifically. I mean, resiliency is part of it. You're sitting next to the experts, and I think you folks are talking after me tonight on the comp plan. Okay, so if you can work that in, that'd be great. So we have an emergency management coordinator, but that person is aimed at responding short term at what we do when there's a flood or a fire or civil unrest, not what happens if the whole paradigm changes and how do we adapt to that. So I think it's fairly fair to say we're not looking at that. We're anticipating probable things and working those in. But if there really is a major shift, I don't think we have a plan in place for what happens if, you know, half of humanity is wiped out, or what happens if we lose power for 8 months or that sort of thing. Yeah. Dan?
Thanks, Dan Dale, North City. This may get commented on a little bit later in the evening as well, but I just was curious, sort of a current beyond our vision on ground floor commercial, both kind of from the council's perspective, where we are now, pilot program in North City and in the Ridgecrest business district, but just where do you see we are and where we're going?
So I came to council from the planning commission, which was, to my astonishment, 12 years ago. I'm 51 today. Like, how did that happen? But when I first started on planning commission, we mandated ground floor retail, and we thought, well, do we really need to do that? Wouldn't it be better to be flexible? And so we took that away as an experiment, and it failed. Right? What we got is basically zero ground floor retail going in. So we put it back in North City and now citywide. The pushback from developers is we can't lease it. And my response is you can't lease it at the price you want, right? So you lower the price enough, something's going to move in. And my example for that is I have 10-year-old twins, and a couple of years ago they got interested in Dungeons and Dragons. I was like, where do you buy a D&D book? Like, I haven't done that since I was 12 myself. And the only place that had D&D books was at a strip mall in Far Edmonds, which was right next to like a tarot shop and all kinds of other really cool businesses who could not possibly afford the rent in Shoreline, right? So we have enough ground floor retail. Those are the kind of businesses I want to see coming back, not just chain stores and banks and, you know, chain coffee places, but places that aren't going to turn a high profit margin. And I'm hoping that by mandating ground floor retail, they have to build it. We're not saying yet they have to lease it at a certain rate. That'll happen. The other tool that we haven't implemented yet is a vacancy, basically a penalty. And it says, you know, if you drive along, you see like a bunch of, you know, this floor available. And I think the one up on near North City had that up for what, 10 years? And I think they eventually put their own office in it. But you can't do that. If you've built ground floor retail, you have to lease it, and you've got to lower the price until you can lease it. And if you don't, then you've got to pay an extra tax on top of it just because we want to see those things move. And I don't understand the business decision that leaves it vacant. And I'm sure there is one, but I don't see that they're better off leaving it vacant for 10 years than they are leasing it at less than they could get if it was residential, but more than zero, right? So anyway, that's a layman's perspective on it, but I'm hoping we can get enough mandated out there that it'll start filling out of its own accord. And I am a minute over, and I don't want to take up other people's time. Thank you all.
New bookstore in the Ridgecrest Business District.
I know. Yeah. Right when I moved out of Ridgecrest, it got cool. So I'm saying coincidence, but who knows? Yeah. All right. Thank you all. And it's Mike to you, or all right.
Back to me for a second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go enjoy your cake now. I am really pleased to introduce, we have people from our Planning and Community Development Department tonight to talk with you about the comprehensive plan, actually, so you can talk with them. Elise Keim, Steve Safran, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Let's just get the clicker working. Okay, hands are full. Good evening, everyone. My name is Elise Keim. I'm a senior planner with the City of Shoreline Planning Department, working on an update to the city's comprehensive plan. That's the vision for 20 years for Shoreline's future. I'm joined by my colleague.
Steve Safran, also a senior planner, going on my 20th year here at the city, and cohort with Elise on the update of the comprehensive plan.
Do I have to point it this way?
No, you should be able
Okay, it's not a Zoom meeting if there aren't technical difficulties. So what are you all in for tonight? We are going to be talking about the city's comprehensive plan, discussing just what is that. We're also going to be taking a peek inside the plan to understand what it says today and talk about how you can get involved in updating the plan. And our goals for tonight are that you come away from this presentation informed. You know what a plan is. You are informed about the plan and understand how it impacts your life. Perhaps a stretch goal, you care about the comprehensive plan. You care enough to get involved in shaping Shoreline's future. But first, before we get into the presentation, we're going to start with an interactive exercise. This is interactive. Please participate by voicing your response aloud. If you are virtual, you can go to the link online there. We have a digital whiteboard set up. We're doing it analog style here in council chambers, but we do have a digital option available. Or if that's not your speed, you can just pop your responses in the chat. That's totally fine. Constance may shout them out for us so we can add it to the board. So what you're tasked with, I'd like you to picture it. Shoreline, 2044. That's 20 years from now. Try to call an image to your mind. What does Shoreline look like? What does it feel like? How would you describe this city? How would you describe Shoreline, a city that you are proud to call home? Shout them out.
Green space parks,
More green space and parks. Entirely walkable. Places to hang out together. More businesses. Restaurants, specifically. Overflowing with community gardens. That's beautiful. A tool library. Yes. A dog park within walking distance. Constance?
Self-governing.
Self-governing.
And another one, diverse, walkable, affordable, many third places.
Incredible.
Rent control for fixed income seniors.
Rent control for fixed income seniors. Really putting Steve through his paces here. Oh, sweet, a monorail leading to the link light rail. This is awesome. Oh. Neighbors having fun together. Walkable streets everywhere. People can work and live in the same city.
A vehicle created new apartment renters with the rest of the residential community. I don't know what that looks like, but somehow are we, all the new persons are going to be, I feel, are segregated for single family, and how we get those people connected as opposed to the apartments being in island. Or like silos.
Sure. So apartments having connection with the broader community and not an island. Happy uniformed service folks.
Traffic control and parking measures.
Ooh.
Speed reduction in some places.
Improved traffic control and parking measures, speed reductions in some places. Bike lanes everywhere.
No homeless people because they have homes in the city rather than being shoved somewhere else. And less to no social atomization.
What was that last? Yeah, say that again.
Less to no social atomization. Jay, if you heard me read that, if you could maybe follow up your chat post and let us know a little bit more about what that is.
Well, I gotta say, Shoreline's future in 2044 is looking bright. All right, we've got a city that's walkable. We've got businesses. We've got places where people can live and work. That's phenomenal. So that's Shoreline in 2044. It's gonna be awesome. But right now, if I can get the clicker to work. I believe in myself, but I don't believe in this clicker. All right. So now we've done the picture it, right? We know where we're going. We've got a destination in mind. Shoreline is looking really bright 20 years from now. The question is, right now it's 2023. What do we need to do to get there, to get to a community that has green spaces and parks, dog parks that you can walk to, a complete network of sidewalks, businesses? What do we need to do? Shout it out.
More federal funding.
Money, more federal funding.
So less forgiveness for multifamily buildings not having to pay tax.
Less forgiveness for multifamily buildings not having to pay tax.
20 years now in the light rail area.
The multifamily tax exemption. Other ideas. How are we going to get sidewalks? Ooh. All right, someone's done their homework. Adding all of these aspects to the planning codes. That is literally how it gets done. Yes, we're going very figured or very literal. Anything virtual?
Yes, streamline permitting processes.
Beautiful.
More creative with some of this code, get more sidewalks, walkability, maybe expanding the vision. What is a sidewalk?
Creativity in our codes and expanding our vision. Fantastic. All right. I'm worried I'm going to advance too far if I. All right. Here's the big reveal. Congratulations. You've all done planning. Well done, everyone. Essentially, this exercise that we've just run through, that's all that planning is. We've got a vision for the future, and we're figuring out how we're going to get there. And people are planning all the time, right? Maybe you're planning a vacation. Maybe you've got a business plan or a lesson plan. Maybe you're planning what's for dinner. Everyone's planning all the time. Comprehensive planning, that's just planning that cities do. That's all it is. So let's turn it over to Steve to learn a little bit more about what a comprehensive plan is.
Great. So we're all planners now. And so what exactly is a comprehensive plan? So, I mean, basically it's a document that describes the community's long-range vision, usually looking 20 years into the future.
There you go.
The plan generally includes three major items: the community's vision, how the city will look and feel over the next 20 years, goals to achieve that vision, and policies or actions to achieve those desired goals. You can think of a comprehensive plan as a state-mandated roadmap to realize the community's vision and to accommodate anticipated population and employment growth. Plan has three characteristics. First, it's comprehensive. The plan includes all the things that make the city livable, like parks, housing, shopping, services, roads, sidewalks, and essential utilities. Second, it's general. The plan is really a summary of the major vision, goals, and policies, but does not include detailed regulations of how to get there. Third, it's long range. The plan is looking beyond the current pressing issues and confronting the communities, identified the long-term goals and policies to achieve the stated vision. Decision makers like the mayor and city council rely on these goals and policies to base decisions on city-funded projects, such as new sidewalks and new parks and open spaces.
Thanks, Steve. So why are we planning? What's the deal there? Comprehensive planning is something required by Washington State through the Growth Management Act. This act found that uncoordinated and unplanned growth was really proving to be a threat to the environment, the economy, and just the quality of life for residents of the state. So the state said to cities and counties, get your act together. We're going to need you to coordinate your growth. Do things like reduce sprawl. Do things like ensure that housing is affordable. Ensure there are opportunities for economic development and protect the environment. And while you're doing all of this, make sure you're involving your community members in this planning process. The Growth Management Act, it sets out specific requirements for states to comply with. Whatever Shoreline's comprehensive plan ultimately ends up staying, at a baseline, it's going to need to comply with the Growth Management Act. So why plan? The short answer is because the state says so, okay? But really why? Why are we doing this? To achieve our goals of city that has a lot of restaurants, that has a totally connected through sidewalks, a city that has beautiful green spaces. In order to create that future, we need a guiding vision. That vision can help us identify our needs and priorities. It'll help us set goals and determine actions that we need to take in order to achieve those goals. The plans help us make decisions. We know that we're a growing community, and a plan helps us determine how and where that growth will occur.
Growth Management Act dictate density within communities. I've heard that Shoreline was set to have a population of 85,000 at some time, right past the time of this long-range plan.
Look, what a perfect segue. Talking about growth, the central Puget Sound region is projected to grow by 1.5 million people by the year 2050. Now, growth targets were set, and they're set by the county actually, to say what it is that different cities in the region need to plan for. For Shoreline, our numbers for that we're looking for to 2044 is for 13,330 new housing units and 10,000 new jobs in Shoreline. Now, of course, actual growth, it could be higher, it could be lower, but we are required to plan for at least this amount. Our neighbors, of course, they're also planning for growth as well. And that's all part of a regional strategy to have growth be focused where there is existing or planned major transportation, where there are job centers, and where there are existing utilities. So why do we plan? Because people are coming here, and it looks like it's going to be a lot of people. And through planning, we can make their lives and ours better. So what? So all of this growth is happening. This plan is 20 years out in the future. Why should you care? Essentially, you should care because this plan, it's about you. It's about you today, It's about you tomorrow. It's about you 20 years from now. As people come to Shoreline, the plan will evolve. It'll start to be about them too. Why should you care? Because a comprehensive plan directs city decisions, city actions, city budgets. And those decisions, actions, and budgets, they impact your lives every day. Let's take a look at some examples. The city decisions and budget, they impact all kinds of day-to-day experiences for people who live and work in Shoreline. A lot of these are important quality of life issues like where you live and how you get around, how you spend your free time, and just how pleasant or unpleasant it is to spend time in Shoreline. It was the 2012 comprehensive plan that said, we're going to focus our growth around existing and planned transit. So that's why we're seeing all of these apartment buildings getting built along Aurora, at Shoreline Place, and at the future light rail centers. These past planning efforts, they impact our lives today. We're going to turn it over to Steve to talk about what's in Shoreline's plan today.
Message that people on virtually can't hear you very well. So I don't know whether it's, yeah.
If questions from the audience could also go into the mic, that'd be helpful.
This sounds better. Okay, so let's look what's in Shoreline's comprehensive plan. So our plan starts with a vision, and that vision is that aspirational statement based on how the community wants to see Shoreline grow and develop over the next 20 years. The plan then goes on to list many goals and policies covering a variety of topics or what we call elements of the plan. Remember that the goals are desired outcomes of the vision from the community, and the policy describes that action to make that goal a reality. So the last slide described the framework of Shoreline's plan, the long-range vision, goals to achieve that vision, and policies to make that goal a reality. Shoreline's plan then goes on to list goals and policies that are organized by specific elements, and Shoreline's elements are there listed on the slide for you. Shoreline's plan is made up of 10 different elements. And each one is made up of specific goals and policies related to that element. So you are aware the state does mandate those elements that are highlighted and underlined. The other elements exist because the community thought those were important enough to be in the city's comprehensive plan. On the next slide, Elise is going to illustrate how the plan has real-world impacts in your life.
Thanks, Steve. So let's go through an example of the comprehensive plan in action. Each step in this process, it's titled Picture It, Plan It, Build It. It's a simple 3-step process for creating a city. It all starts with a vision for the future. That's the picture it phase, and that's the one we're in right now. And then a more specific plan starts to come together in the plan it phase. And that's followed by the build it phase. And that's where most people, they start to see real world impacts of a plan. Our example tonight is the Aurora Avenue improvements. What you see here is an image of the before times. This is Aurora Avenue before any improvements. There are no sidewalks. There's a lot of overhead power lines. You don't see any street trees. But the city had a vision for the future of this road. Picture it, Shoreline, 1998. With that comprehensive plan, the city wanted Aurora to be a thriving and pleasant commercial core. Residents and business owners shared their vision for a main road through town. People wanted a safer road. They wanted a place that looked nice, helped businesses thrive, and was easy to get around, whether you were driving, taking the bus, or walking or rolling. People could picture this future, but how are we going to get there? We needed a plan. This 3-mile stretch of road needed a lot of help. This included improvements for pedestrians, for transit, for drivers, and for businesses. Alternatives were considered, the community was consulted, and ultimately, a design was selected. And it focused on transit and business access, things like landscaping, undergrounding those utilities, having improvements for pedestrians, and of course, stormwater improvements. With the plan in place, it was time to build. We didn't get from 1998 to today without a lot of intense construction impacts. But the end result is pretty dramatic. We see major improvements. And this is just one example of what a comprehensive plan can do. It starts with an idea, like a monorail, right? Yes, it starts with an idea. And from there, it can create real change that impacts all of our lives. Let's hear from Steve a little bit more about how a comprehensive plan gets made.
Thank you, Elise. So what goes into the making of a comprehensive plan? Really, there's 3 key ingredients. First, the city must consider legal requirements, which come from a variety of state departments, regional governments, and city and county mandates. All of the legal mandates and requirements will ensure that the city plans for the sufficient land capacity to accommodate growth and employment targets over the next 20 years. Remember, Shoreline needs a plan for 13,300 new dwelling units and 10,000 new jobs over the next 20 years. These legal requirements also ensure the city considers environmental protections for streams, wetlands, landslide hazard areas, climate protection and resiliency, equity and inclusion, housing affordability, new and expanded parks and open spaces, sufficient roads, sidewalks, and transportation options for all of this new anticipated growth. Second ingredient is all the data, and there is a lot of data that we collect through this process. We need to know what's been happening since the last update of the comprehensive plan and how things are changing or going to be changed based on a wide variety of information that we collect. As shown on the slide, staff looks at data around population growth and where new residents will live in the future. So, you know, Shoreline's population just exceeded 61,000 people, and now we still need to plan for another 30,000 over the next 20 years. We look at demographics. Shoreline's demographics are constantly changing, and the city is getting more diverse. The city needs to be ready to serve the needs of all of our residents. The city looks at income and employment, housing affordability and housing choice, traffic growth and traffic patterns in order to direct funds to new road and safety projects. So all of this data informs staff and the community of issues facing the city now and into the future. The third ingredient, and the most important, is community input. The comprehensive plan is the community's future vision for Shoreline. So the plan is really the community's responsibility to help develop. City staff, through an adopted public participation plan, has and will continue to create online and in-person open houses. We have topic-specific focus group, surveys, community consultant interviews, and other community events to solicit comments, suggestions, and ideas for new goals and policies for those issues that are important to the community. So ultimately, Shoreline's new comprehensive plan will bring together 1, the community's vision through community input, 2, information from a wide variety of data sources, and 3, legal mandates to plan for and accommodate our specific growth targets. after the plan is written, it's then the planning commission and council's job to review that work that went into the creation of the plan and eventually adopt it as Shoreline's new 2044 comprehensive plan.
Thanks, Steve. So we need your help with that third key ingredient of the comprehensive plan, community input. Your input on Shoreline's future, what Shoreline is going to look like in 20 years, we need that information right now. What we've got here is a timeline of the project. This update is going to be going on through the end of 2024 when the state says your plans do give it over. We have done some initial outreach, but we're looking to hear from more people as we develop goals and policies and create a draft plan that ultimately will get adopted by council. We have a number of outreach efforts that are going to be coming up this fall, including an interactive website and a survey that'll be launching in November. We'll be doing some topic-specific workshops on things like housing and the environment. We'll have an in-person open house that's scheduled for November 15th. And we would love for you to sign up for updates about the comprehensive plan so that you can receive invitations to these events as they get closer. We do have a short online survey available right now. It's targeted to the folks attending CityLearn, and it looks like that. It's at the website, shorelinewa.gov/shoreline 2044. Right up there at the top is a really brief survey where you can sound off about what's important to you for Shoreline's future, and also sign up to get updates about the comprehensive plan. And through all of this effort, we are trying to make outreach as convenient, inclusive, and accessible as possible to the residents of Shoreline. If you're connected to an existing community group or organization that maybe wants to learn more about the comprehensive plan, or the organization wants to share their concerns, contact us. We would love to set something up. We are especially interested in reaching out to people who haven't been included in planning efforts in the past. For example, youth, people who rent, people with disabilities, and people whose native language is something other than English. If you are interested, please reach out to us. We would love to connect.
One of the biggest,
You could speak into the mic, please.
One of the biggest organizations that is inside Shoreline is the school district. They do long-range planning as best as they can for what's going on. And they have their own long-range plan. How much outreach to them and the chamber and the other folks that are there that are doing some of their own long-range plan for their perspective on what's happening, as well as those who come and go. Some of us have been here for 46 years or longer and have a past perspective about where things were and how they've changed. But the large organizations that are already not doing a plan like yours, but doing their own plan that should fit with data and perspectives and what they see economically happening in the area. Have you already set that up?
Yes. So we are starting our outreach with the school. I have a meeting set up with someone from the school district tomorrow, in fact. Now that school's back in session, to try to get some outreach to the youth, but then also talk to the school in general about their plans for the future and what that looks like in Shoreline. We're also, just earlier today, we're able to reach out with the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you. Had really a fantastic meeting with them, and we're going to be following up with some workshops and additional outreach. Yeah. All of these questions. Okay, this is the last slide. And I mean, the punchline is really there on the screen. We're trying to picture Shoreline in 2044, and we would love for all of you to be part of that picture. Are there any questions? Thank you, Steve. Steve's coming around with the mic.
So I've been in Shoreline for 20 years. I was here when the Aurora corridor was in the planning stage. And one of the shocking numbers that came out of that plan was the cost. $40 million a mile, $40 million a mile. And engineers and economists and all sorts of folks looked at that and said, that's a little expensive. But what's the real cost? The real cost is when you say, I don't understand why stores are not opening in Shoreline. Well, when it costs $40 million a mile to build it, I don't care where the money came from. The end result is stores say, I can't afford to set up shop here. When we look at housing and it's $2,000 for a single bedroom, where did that cost come from? Well, it goes back to that $40 million a mile and an attitude that who cares what it costs? Somebody else is going to pay it. So planning has to be about reducing costs, not whatever the traffic will bear.
Just quickly, when we look at those projections, can you comment on population to housing units? How many people are we thinking in one of those housing units? Because it gets us to a different place. If we're at 61 now and we're projected to 90 with 13,000 units, if they're mostly one bedroom and studios, it doesn't really pencil out. So where are we with that in terms of that guesstimation on?
So we use Puget Sound Regional Council's number of 2.5 residents per unit.
That's a lot.
I'm still Thomas. You want to take a shot at the question I asked earlier?
Yeah, this was about
Transition towns, yes. At least thinking about developing contingency plans for much more dramatic collapse than just emergency management of a climactic event, for example.
Sure. It's a new term to me. There's all kinds of planning in the world. There's transportation, there's environmental, there's urban planning, there's rural planning, and now there's transition town planning, which we'll need to study up on. That isn't presently in the comprehensive plan, but could it be? This is the time to add it. If this is something that we need to be considering as a community, what better place than in the comprehensive plan? One, two, three. That's how.
I just want to thank you for doing this plan and involving the community. I have a question about transparency. I filled out the survey a while ago, and I haven't heard anything about my answers. I think it would be really great if we can publish everyone's answers, because there might be groups of people who have certain ideas, and then we could flesh out, like, let's say I have ideas about the dog parks, but maybe there's 10 people who have more ideas about those dog parks. So you can come together as a group and really give the public what they really want. So it's more like if we can have more transparency about the answers, then we can maybe create subcommittees and really flesh it out the way our community would like it to be. Oh, and yes, is this a different survey from the previous survey?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. The survey results, they are up on the website, but I don't think we did much in the way of promotion of those results. So that is a great idea. I'm not a PR person, learning how to do those things. Oh, right up at the top, Shoreline 2044, you get below the sort of logo for the city with all those circles that we have for the comprehensive plan. Right under there, it's like, the initial survey is closed, but here are the results. But yeah, how to like actually, yeah, Totally. And that, yes, exactly. From the survey results, how people can find community, people who are interested in those same topics. And let's get some juice behind those ideas. I love that. Thank you. And the survey available right now is incredibly short. It's just like, what are your thoughts for Shoreline's future? And then email sign up for comments. So it is a very brief survey. Yeah. And also how you heard about CityLearn. We're trying to understand how you learned about this and how we can do a better job of promoting it. 2, then 3.
So a couple of the numbers that you had up were 13,300 housing units and 10,000 jobs. Does the Growth Management Act mandate that you actually arrive at that or just plan for it? Because planning and arriving are two different things, right?
Are they ever? So we are required to plan for that amount, whether or not it arrives. It's kind of out of our control, right? If there's like a big society changing event that happens and we need a transition plan for it, like if there's, I don't know, global pandemic that occurs and maybe the jobs are changing, like those are things not in our control, but we can create the environment that would allow this kind of growth and sort of hope that it comes. But if it doesn't, or it's different, we have done our role in at least planning for that number. 2, 3.
Hi, my name's Alan and I live in Richmond Beach. Whenever I see the 13,000 pop up anywhere on the web or wherever, I think of 13,000 new cars on the road. And I'm concerned about traffic in the area. And I know we have some accidents and involving hitting people, et cetera. But is there any consideration for high-tech taxis like are being talked about now where they're driverless? You call them, they come pick you up, take you there, drop you off.
What a good question. So part of the comprehensive plan, it's not just the units, it's not just the jobs. We also need to look at transportation. So that way we are ensuring that our transportation network can accommodate this growth. As for specifics of driverless taxis and stuff like that, we're not currently planning for it, but that doesn't mean it can't go in the comprehensive plan. We would need to look at what would the regulatory environment be for this kind of technology. Is it something like, for example, the little scooters that are around in some cities, right? Like they're in some cities and not in others because they're allowed in some cities and not in others. Would we do the same thing for a driverless taxi service? Like we'd want to see what that technology looks like and respond with regulations.
We have some online
Oh,
questions as
okay.
well.
Okay.
Okay. Somebody would like to know how the plan addresses policy versus legislation. Is it assumed that legislation is the main tool for change?
That's a great question. So the plan has goals and policies. So these are statements about a desired outcome and some sort of action to get there, but it is not the level of detail of regulation, which says, okay, you can or cannot have these driverless taxi cabs, or you have to have, the buildings are so high or something like that. That's not in the comprehensive plan. It doesn't get to the detail of regulation, but all regulations that the city creates have to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So we can't just out of the blue change something that's completely counter to our comprehensive plan. It needs to be consistent. So anytime we're making a regulatory change, that's one of the criteria that we have to look at is what does the comprehensive plan say about all of this? which is why the plan is general in nature. It doesn't get down to that like level of detail, because could we possibly think in the next 20 years of every technological breakthrough right now? Probably not. So the plan stays general, and then we get more specific with our regulations.
I'm curious as what your plan is to reach out to younger people and get them involved in the plan. This is their plan.
It absolutely is the plan for the younger people, the folks who will be inheriting the city and coming of age in 2044. What kind of future are we creating for them? And we're going to be doing our outreach primarily through the schools. That's what we're looking at. But we're also going to be reaching out with our contacts in the Parks and Recreation Department, who are working with youth leadership organizations and stuff like that. So trying to get all of them involved. They just doing other things over the summer, and that's okay.
Okay, in reference to 13,000 lessons learned, did we learn any lessons about parking requirements for multifamily in the last 10 years as we added more apartments with less parking, and kind of what a miserable fail in a lot of ways that was, because people were still moving in with cars even though there wasn't parking available, or they had to pay for it, so the option was to park on the streets. So when we look at additional housing units, how do we also consider long range, that people will still have cars, and what we do with those that still drive?
We did learn lessons, and we've changed development code based on those lessons of saying that you can't charge separate parking fee from the rent of your unit, which changed a lot of that, since people would have to pay for parking. So then they don't want to pay for parking, so they go park in the neighborhoods and on the streets.
You put a freeze on them raising the rents to cover their parking?
No, we're not involved in rent control at this time. And the comprehensive plan is probably not going to speak specifically to parking. That's what our regulations are going to be about. As we're a city in transition from a very auto-dependent layout, right? You gotta, how many people drove here? Anyone take the bus? Anyone walk? People at home. So that's how our community has been designed. You must rely on a personal vehicle in order to have access to the city. So is that something we want to continue? Or is that something we would like to move away from? And what does that transition look like? Yes, okay. Yes, I saw your hand.
My name is Linda Tsai. My husband and I, we live in the Richmond Beach area. Just a quick question out of curiosity, as comprehensive plans are being developed and worked upon, is there outreach being done in connections with our neighboring municipalities like Lake Forest Park and Edmonds? Is there cross dialogue? Just curious. Thank you.
Not had a ton. Have you, Steve? No, feels like every jurisdiction is nose to the grindstone because we've all got our marching orders and are working to make that possible. We do have some existing policies in our plans that talk about, for specific efforts, for example, housing, making sure that we are part of a regional approach to that. So we have that contemplation of Shoreline isn't an island. We've got a lot of neighbors, and making sure that our programs are coordinated with them. But on the specific comprehensive plan, like for an outreach event or something, we've not, but that's an interesting idea. Yeah.
With the Sound Transit light rail station projects, I know we've coordinated with the city of Seattle, since our station's so close to the border of Seattle, but there's dialogue, but there isn't a whole lot of interaction with the actual development of the plans, but we do inform each other of what we're doing.
So in Bothell, they put up right on 520, they put up a lot of high density housing. And they pretty much made it not impossible, but almost impossible to have a car and live there. There's just no parking. There's a couple of spaces in the garage, but that's it. But they didn't stop there. What they did is there's enough retail and commercial property around. My friend who moved there had to have a car, told me she doesn't have to have a car anymore. She can get everywhere she needs to go, either public transportation or walking. That's planning. By the time this, there's no place to park, there's no need for a car. That's good planning. Mandating that you will have a parking space for every apartment when you need to have a car because there's no place you can get to without a car, that's not good planning.
Just a quick comment too, is I think it's how do we bridge the gap from now to then? And so it's again, getting creative of how do we think about Zipcar, car to go? How do we think about a shuttle that gets people from Richmond Beach up the hill to the light rail station? So I think there's a lot of opportunity before the end vision to apply things that we can do now that gets us there.
Thank you. Do you have a comment?
I see is one. Just one of many, but when we're talking about cars and transportation. So, we live in the Pacific Northwest. There are places that are only accessible by car. There is no shuttle bus that runs on a regular basis to both Stevens Pass and Snoqualmie. There is no shuttles that run up to Deception Pass to go camping. I don't know if I want to go out to Ocean Shores, how am I going to get there? Greyhound? I might still want a car.
Any online questions or comments?
There is a comment that you all could comment on. It's noted that legislation changes are coming from the state and the county that will be really affecting this process as well. And if you could comment on those, that would be great.
Where to start?
Yeah, it's a big one.
Which legislation changes do they want to talk about? We've got a number. We're going to talk about housing. Yeah. So there's a big change statewide, an effort called middle housing. What is that term? It is house-sized buildings with more than one unit in it. That's it. So like a duplex, it's about the same size as a house, but there are two homes in there. That's all. So some recent changes in state regulations say that middle housing is coming to Shoreline. And it's going to be in a lot of different forms. Right now in the city, we got maybe 3 choices of housing type. You got your detached home, you got your attached home, like your townhouse, and you've got your apartment building. Not much else. So middle housing is going to allow a lot different forms of housing to come to Shoreline. So maybe you want to live in a cottage development. These are small homes, they're grouped together around a nice open space. Now that's a thing that can happen in Shoreline. Maybe you want to live in a duplex. Maybe you want to live in a triplex. There's a bunch of different options and they're all going to be available in Shoreline. So if maybe you got a split level house, but you don't need the whole thing anymore. Well, what if you do a retrofit and now you have a duplex, right? And that works for you. Great. Now you're allowed to do that, whereas before you weren't. So state regulations are coming in that are making some changes on the types of housing that are going to be available in Shoreline. And it's happening citywide. So they didn't just single out Shoreline, like everyone's doing this.
So Elise, Dominic Delino again from Unisarden. So I realize that, maybe I should take this off. So I realize that primarily our means of change is capitalism and regulations and city policies and so forth. But I'd like to throw out kind of in response to gentlemen's questions about transition cities and Pete's question about, well, we have 10,000 jobs we're planning for, but are we going to get there? So one other component is how are we going to manage culture change, or how can we assist culture change? Now, it may be beyond the scope of the planning department, but I just kind of throw it out there to say, you know, there's, however flawed it may be, there's an educational model that would just suggest that there's all kinds of ways we can, you know, better educate people about how to efficiently get around, how to recycle more efficiently, how to borrow tools instead of buying them, all those kinds of things. And I just wonder, who is going to take the lead on trying to find ways to achieve culture change? Because it's really about a lot of these things we're talking about, and a lot of these things that we're hoping to achieve really do require a shift of mindset. And so we can at least get it out there. There's so many people that don't even know about so many of the fundamental things that we offer that, you know, it's always, I keep saying it's always about publicity, and that's the most important piece of it. So I just throw that idea out and, you know, throw it in your lap to say, is that something we could, I mean, we plan for, like you said, we make policies that need to, you know, the regulations need to coincide with policies, and it's all driven by the plan in a way. So I'm just throwing it out. What could be done in that regard to move people to a different mindset?
Just a light question on how we're going to reshape society. Yeah, I'll take that on. That's a phenomenal question. And I think it goes to your point. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. In the back with the dog. Natalie, her point about how we could do a better job at the city of facilitating connection, because where's culture? It's all of us, right? That's what culture is. It's not centralized of like, I am the culture department. Like, I mean, some places have that, but that's, you know, broadly speaking. So how do we create a shift in mindset? We facilitate connections, right? We facilitate, people are interested in this idea of a tool library, for example. I don't have to buy that lawnmower. I don't have to buy the whatever other tools. And instead you can share with your neighbor, and that concept is perhaps lost if we're all isolated. But if we're facilitating this connection, that's how we're going to drive change. So what can the city do in that? What can our plan do in that? Exactly. We start to facilitate. I don't just take your comments and keep them away to myself and like, oh, look, I can write a plan. And then you just see it 6 months later and you're like, what is, it's about facilitating that connection so that we're not all in this alone. That's the whole point of the plan. So we're in it together.
Still Thomas, I'm on the board of the Northwest Intentional Communities Association. And the culture change that you're referring to, including like tool libraries and so on. A friend of mine wrote a book called The Not So Big House, and the tiny house movement partly sprung out of that. So the culture change is already afoot. It's already out there. It's just a matter of making the connections. And if it would be useful, I can connect the Intentional Community Association with the planning committee in order to maybe facilitate some recognition of what's already afoot. And we're in touch with a lot of people who are seeking affordable housing, and they want to do it together. They don't want to do it all alone. So it's out there, it's in motion.
Thank you.
That sounds phenomenal. Thank you for that. Sorry, Constance.
I'm sorry, before we run out of time, somebody's been very patient here. If this is a two-part question. One, how far along will the light rail be by 2044?
Ooh.
Is
it going to be in Everett by then? Maybe. I hope so. Yeah, we would have to look at the sound transit plan, because I'm not even sure of their funding right now. That's just me I don't work for Sound Transit, so I'm not sure what their budget is or specifically their plans. I know it'll be in Shoreline. We know that much. It's coming next year.
Well, and then this is the second part. How feasible would it be to offer direct service to certain stops? Example, offering a direct nonstop rail service from the Northgate station to the airport station or Northgate to the stadium station for football games and certain baseball games and for commuters. Northgate station to Boeing location in Everett when that opens. I would pay a premium for this service and it eliminates fossil fuel emissions while adding more revenue. And I'm going to say, Everton, thank you for these questions. These are great. I think that we need to have one of these city learns with Sound Transit again too.
Oh, what a great idea.
So but anything you can answer from this would be great.
Yeah, I mean, my answer, it's just all going to be conjecture, right? The line is. Oh, thank you. 2037 is the plan. Sweet. For Everett. But yeah, what's for like nonstop from Northgate to the stadiums, nonstop? I don't know. Yeah, they might have to lay more track in order to make that happen because the tracks, like, there's one of them or there's two of them, like they're going one way or the other.
So I just want to address the issue of the express trains or nonstop trains. When the light rail opened for Northgate, we talked a lot to Sound Transit about that because we moved from the East Coast where I would commute, to New York City, and there are express trains, there are local trains, various trains, and it works really well. Well, Sound Transit does not have any plan for nonstop trains. And that was because they had to lay extra track. And so, I really suggest lobbying for that. It's crazy to take an hour, to get from here to SeaTac. So.
Thank you for sharing that experience. Yeah, a vision of fast trains and sounds terrific. Constance, did you want to close us out?
Are there any more questions out there? Yeah, that's true. Thanks so much, everybody. We are at time here, and I want to thank the people who joined us virtually tonight. We've had as many of them online as there are of you, so actually more. So thank you very much. And Elise, you have given us information about how people can be in touch with you about this process. Next month at CityLearn, which will be October 4th, we will have the Seattle Fire Department here to talk about, or Shoreline Fire Department. Thank you very much. Yes, we could have Seattle. It wouldn't make much difference. But no, it makes a lot of difference because they have expanded at this point, and we'll get to hear about what they're doing. And then the following month, we got some questions tonight online about the surface water master plan. So we'll be looking at that. And then watch for, I know, did you have your sign up out for people to sign up for more information? Okay, great. I will be starting a mailing list for CityLearn and you will be on it. So thank you all very much. Have a good evening.